this spaceship and rocket.
Let me take you around the world, and after we're going to start in Africa. We're going to start in Egypt and Sudan. And Egypt and Sudan, I don't know if you know it or not, are in Africa. Did you know that? Yes. And they've always been in Africa. I've been in Egypt, I think, 24 times now, and it's been in Africa every single time, with no exceptions. And this is an important piece. Now, a lot of times we start with Egypt or Kemet, which is the actual name. I taught a class last night, and a person asked me, Renoko, Dr. Rashidi, should we use the African names whenever possible? A lot of us don't know the African names. So we use both the traditional names, or European names in some cases, as well as the African names as we move along. Remember, this is a process. A lot of us develop a bit of knowledge, develop a bit of consciousness, and then have a tendency to look down on people who were just like we were at one point in time. It's easy to be condescending and self-righteous when you get a little bit of knowledge. But condescension and self-righteousness are not a part of the admonitions of my aunt. So what is consciousness? What does it mean to be conscious? Being conscious is more than the clothes you wear. Yeah. Being conscious is knowing is more than knowing the difference between Hotep and Hetepu. Being conscious is more than having a tradition. It's what you do. I never saw Marcus Garvey with traditional African clothes, and he didn't have a traditional African name. But he loved Africa. So stop talking about you know more than everybody else, your religion is superior to everybody else. Judge people not on those things. Judge people on their actions, on what they do every day. That is consciousness. Consciousness is not what you wear. Consciousness is not just having a few words of Swahili or Twi. Consciousness is what you do. Now, this piece is right here in your neck of the woods, not far from here. This is at the Oriental Institute of the University of Chicago. You have resources right in your own backyard. I was at the Field Museum today for the first time. I saw the Egyptian collection in the Field Museum. I pledged myself to see every significant Egyptian collection in the world. And that may sound very ambitious, but I've already done 90% of it. Now I'm just kind of cleaning up. So I went to the Field Museum today, and I realized that somebody had done some serious work. Because near the Egyptian section, there's a sign that's with a map that says Egypt is in Africa. Somebody put some pressure on folk to do that. Because you know these Europeans don't want to let up. Even now in 2017, I would imagine the average European scholar, in parentheses, would deny that Egypt was African. So you have resources right here, and I wanted to acknowledge that. Now here, it's you know, you run into politics too. This is an incense burner that's about 5,400 years old. Okay, it's older than any of us, even me. And this is not from Egypt, it's from Sudan, from a place called Qustul. And this is where the kingdom of Taseti was. The name Taseti, T-A-S-E-T-I, means the land of the bow, as in bow and arrow. And it's important because this is a kingdom that precedes even Egypt. So Egypt is very ancient, but there were other kingdoms in Africa that came before that. And this is also important because it says that the impetus for Egypt did not come from Europe, did not come from Asia, but came from deep in the heart of Africa. Now, the reason I say the politics come into play is because the way the piece is displayed, you can't see the king on the throne. You can see it in the books where you see the whole image photographed and demonstrated. On the other side of it is a man seated on a throne like this one with a crown on that we are later to associate with ancient Egypt or Kemet itself. So the piece is in the Oriental Institute of the University of Chicago, but they don't show you the way it's positioned, the most important part of it. Now, isn't that interesting? So the piece is there, but what makes the piece significant is turned around so that you can't see it or photograph it. So we need to put some pressure there too, because it's not enough just to know. You got to do something with it. I want to make you feel good. But the reason I want to make you feel good is because I want you to do something with that good feeling. Just feeling good by itself is not enough. That's the start. Self-esteem, pride. But what do you do? All right. And then we're going to go right down to dynasty. We're going to spend a lot of time with Egypt. So I hope you're ready for that. I'm going to go fairly quickly, and then I'm going to take you around the world. What I want to do is look at classical civilization. One of the things I learned from perhaps my greatest teacher, a man named Ivan Van Sertima. Ivan used to say, you heard of Ivan Van Sertima? Yeah. Can't take for granted now. Everybody doesn't know who some of these folk are. You know about Kevin Durant. You know about LeBron and how many points they scored, the kind of dunk he did last night. But the average African American cannot tell you the name of a single African who lived before slavery. So if you know more about Beyonce than you know about Queen Ty, something's wrong. We are not being programmed in the right way. So we'll go through Kemet and we'll go through it fairly quickly and I'll take you around the world. This is a very important figure. This is the person that we call the Scorpion King. We have no idea what this man's name was. But the reason he's called that is because there's a scorpion in front of him. This is also, we're going to go through the dynasties. Do you know what a dynasty is? A dynasty is a family of rulers, one member of the family coming after the other for an extended period of time. Okay? A royal house. And you have 30 dynasties in ancient Egypt, or Kemet, which means the black city or the black community. And of those 30 dynasties, I'd say 25 or 26 were native African dynasties. You do have a few foreign invaders. You have, for example, dynasties 16 and 17 are made up of the people called the Hyksos, the rulers of foreign lands who invaded Africa. And then towards the end of Kemet, you have the Persian invasions. But of the 30 dynasties, I'd say 25 solid are purely African dynasties. And it's interesting in that the head of every African dynasty was a woman. The line of descent is passed through the female side of the family. In order for the king to be the king, for the king to have legitimacy, he had to marry the female in whom the royal bloodline reigned. What does that tell us? That women were very
And none of
respected.
these depictions are real.
I like that. Now you can measure, if you want to, the great civilization of Kemet because of the pyramids they built, the architecture in general, the temples, the tombs, the monuments, the literature. But you also look at the greatness of a society based on the values of the people in that society. So that women are highly respected. The worst thing you could do was to disrespect your mother. That was considered an abomination. You just didn't do that. It was unthinkable. There were no prisons in ancient Egypt. The concept of prison seems to be purely European. There were no old folks' home. It wasn't like you were waiting around to put your parents away. There was no child abandonment there. I've never heard of sexual abuse. There's not a single case of rape in the entire history of Egypt. This is profound. Because if you look at Europe, that's the entire history. Warfare, violence, child abandonment, the abuse of women, so that a dog becomes a man's best friend. That's deep. You cannot even find, and I've only seen one exception, and I'll share that with you today, in the history of ancient Greece and Rome, where you have a man and a woman portrayed together. Do you know Plato, who is regarded as the greatest of the Greek philosophers, thought that a romantic relationship between a man and a woman was a form of insanity. If a man fell in love with a woman or a woman fell in love with a man, it was Plato's idea that they must be insane. Plato's idea of the ideal relationship was an older man and a young boy. So don't you go around talking about, I want a platonic relationship. Sometimes sisters tell you that. Look, I don't want to get too deep. I don't want to get intimate. I just want a platonic relationship. And I guess in their attitude, in their thinking, that's a non-intimate relationship. That ain't what that word means. We should examine a lot of the terminology that we use. Because a lot of us are using cast-off terminology that has nothing to do with the African experience. We're using terms that other people have used and attempted to apply to our situation, and it doesn't fit. All right. So here's Scorpion. This is a bad photograph right here. And this represents my work over the last several years in particular, spending all my money, traveling all over the world, breaking up relationships to go into these museums and take these pictures. This is from the first dynasty. And this is a brother named Narmer. And this piece is called Narmer's Palette. It's gray slate. It's in the Egyptian, this one is in Oxford, in England. This is in Cairo itself. And one of the best things about traveling to Egypt now, I was just there in September, now you can take photographs again in the museums. For about 10 or 15 years, they stopped that. You know, that's very frustrating. To get into one of these places, and you got this expensive camera, and they tell you leave it at the door. So about a year ago, in order to make some money, they decided to reverse that policy. So you could do a tour to Kemet and just visit the museums alone. They don't care about the culture. They don't care if you learn anything. They want to make some money. Because the people who are in Egypt today are not the people who built the pyramids. These are invaders themselves. And for them, ancient Egypt is a cash cow. They talk about how we can make some money. And trust me, they do not give a damn about you and me. And they treat African Americans much better than they do people on the continent. That's why the situation in Libya is going on. Because the people who are involved in that are invaders of Africa. They will never be Africans. Just because you've been in a place for a long time don't make you native to that place. As Kwame Ture used to say, just because a cat has babies in an oven, you don't call the babies biscuits. You should apply that to the American experience. So y'all going around talking about I'm a black American, I have, questions with that. When did you start being an American, by the way? From the time you were taken from Africa, at what point did you cease to be an African and become something else? So these kinds of questions.
Human body, we generate electricity. A brain is running on electricity, central nervous system, electricity. And the electricity is operating in a field that's a magnetic field, which makes us become electromagnetic.